South Africa is firmly in the sights of international cybercrime syndicates who have been ramping up their attacks on local companies in the past 6 months. This is according to an article by Nclose, an international cybersecurity defense, offence and protection specialist based in South Africa. And to speak to us more about this and how stepping up information security spend has become a business imperative, we are joined by Nclose's co-founder and technical director, Martin Potgieter. Martin, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Morning, and thank you for having me on the show.
Now, speak to us about this surge in cybercrime activity, in particular ransomware attacks. What seems to be the cause of this?
Well, firstly, the surge is not just in South Africa. It's a global thing, and it really started last year, very much in time with when the pandemic started. And essentially what it is criminals and criminal syndicates are holding companies to ransom by encrypting their data. And they're able to extract money, and so it's quite profitable for them. And so that's why we've seen this dramatic uptick. In some circles, they're talking about hundreds of % increase in ransomware attacks.
In layman's terms, what are ransomware attacks?
Well, essentially what the attackers do is they gain access to your network. Once they have access to your network, they encrypt the data on the network, whether it's on your file server. And in many cases, they also extract that data out of your network so that they have access to that data. And sometimes they use that as a tactic to also extort money out of the companies. And that's really the crux of it. They ask for payment via Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is anonymous and it's difficult to trace. And so that really makes it a kind of a perfect crime, if you will, for them. It's very low risk for them, and they're able to do it fairly quickly. Some of these attacks happen in a matter of days once the attackers have access to the networks of the companies.
The article points out that South African companies typically do not pay the ransoms. Why is this?
Well, this is our experience, and I believe that that's actually a positive point, because like terrorism, if you give in to terrorism, you know, there's a sense that it may happen more. And in actual fact, this is some thought schools say that this is why we're seeing more attacks, because there's insurance for this type of attack, and the insurance companies are now often paying out for these ransomware attacks and spurring on the activity in itself. So it's good that companies, in my view, it's good that they don't pay out, but it can be quite devastating for a company when something like this happens. So it's a very tricky situation.
Tricky indeed. I mean, there's also been an increase in syndicates that make use of humans to launch and coordinate their attacks. Tell us more about this aspect and how it operates.
Well, yes. So traditionally, the whole concept of ransomware is an automated type, or several years ago is fully automated. So kind of the ransomware infects one machine, and then it encrypts everything on that machine. But now we're seeing humans and syndicates actually moving around in the network once they have access and going around encrypting not just one workstation, they're encrypting file servers. And so they're involving humans into the kind of attack scenario, which makes it a lot more successful and a lot more devastating actually for companies.
And what are some of the early signs that companies must look out for when it comes to these cyber ransomware attacks?
Well, that's a difficult question, because normally when you know about it, it's too late. You've been attacked and your data is encrypted. So the best thing is to be proactive about it. Most people or most organizations will have the basic security mechanisms in place, like a firewall and antivirus. But really, we need to move beyond that, and we need to make directors and boards aware that they need to invest more in security to protect their organizations. And so really, it's a proactive approach that needs to be taken here.
What is that approach? I mean, what can companies do to gear up to protect themselves from falling prey to such cyber crimes and attacks?
Well, it's difficult for smaller organizations because they may not have dedicated IT people or dedicated IT security people.
Okay.
And in those cases, they should definitely approach, look at outsourcing that, just to get some advice to make sure they're doing the right thing. Larger companies are a little bit more, it's easier for them because they generally do have dedicated IT security people that look at this all the time. So there's whole methodologies they need to approach to secure their networks. But if you don't have the luxury of having those dedicated roles in your organization, it's definitely worth looking at someone to help.
Okay. And I understand that your company will be hosting a webinar later on in the month, just outlining the changing trends in cyber attacks and other topics. Tell us more about that.
Well, the whole idea of the webinar is just to just to make people aware of the situation, because what we're seeing is that boards are asking their IT people when they are being attacked, like, what's happened? Why haven't we been ready? And it seems like there's a lack of awareness at a board and executive level about what's actually going on here. And so the webinar is really to enlighten the boards and the executives about this type of activity and the risk that's involved, and that South Africa really needs to step up their game in terms of, South African companies need to step up their game in terms of protecting their organizations.
And the details of the webinar, how do people take part?
You got me at a I don't actually have the details here in front of me. I'll have to send you the details, but it will be an online webinar that obviously everyone can join. So if you allow me to share those details with you, you can maybe announce it shortly after.
All right, no worries. Thanks for that, Martin. We do appreciate your time. Thank you for chatting to us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
All right, cheers. Now, Martin Potgieter is Nclose's co-founder and technical director, and he just joined us on Zoom to unpack the increase in ransomware attacks on South African companies.